I'm Catherine Comden, Behavior Program Manager at Willamette Humane Society in Salem, Oregon. Did you know that some of the same alternative healing therapies used on people also works for animals? Have you ever wondered if you could learn a few simple massage techniques that can help your own pets? Today in the studio, we're visiting with Jackie Jenkins, a certified Reiki master, massage and acupressure therapist, and aromaologist who has helped hundreds of our cats and dogs' health and behavior. I was amazed at the difference she works within just a few minutes, and you will be too. We've got real dogs on this show, and you'll get to see them enjoy Jackie's healing touch, and you'll learn techniques to try at home. So invite your favorite cat or dog to your lap and watch this week's Pets and People. Jackie, I'm so glad that you're here joining us today. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I love that you're here, and I love what you do at Willamette Humane. How long have you been a volunteer there?
I've been a volunteer for about almost 2 years, but I've been massaging for about a year.
Okay, and you've been doing massage, though, for quite a long time. Give us a little bit of background about how you came into doing massage. What were your early days like? When did you start?
Well, as most of us do, I started when I was a child. I had pets, animals, would find injured animals and took care of them, and it just seemed like a nice, comfortable place for me to be. When I decided to go to college, however, I didn't think that I could work with animals because I always hated it when I lost them. So I decided I would do special education, which I did get my degree in the early 70s. And it was about that time that I discovered Reiki, because it was another modality to use with the children that I was working with. So I am a Reiki master, certified in equissage, certified in shiatsu, and then I went for one more modality to get a certification in aromaology so that I could use every sense that I could possibly touch with an animal.
What kinds of animals have you worked on in your career doing that?
I have worked on most every animal you could think of, from horses to snakes. Snakes, and they actually like massage a lot.
Okay. We did not bring any snakes
darn,
to the
because
show
you
today.
would be able to see, they just, anyway.
Interesting.
And so right now I'm just working with the dogs and cats at the Humane Society, but I work now also with horse rescues and massage the horses from there.
Yeah, fantastic. And Jackie actually came out to the barn where I board my horse, and you did some work on the horses there, and it was really fascinating to watch how they adjusted their bodies, how they released the tension in their bodies, how we could find certain places where they would almost ask us to hold that touch for a little bit, and it was really fascinating to watch you work.
Thank you.
So,
because I do try to share with everybody, it is for the comfort of the animals, and but it also brings you closer to your animal when you can really talk to them on their level. They may not speak words, but they certainly tell us lots of things. We just usually miss the message. So
when you begin working with an animal, I know that you do ask permission.
I do.
So what does that look like? How do you ask the animal whether they can participate with you?
It isn't always verbal. But when there are people around, so they know what I'm doing, I usually will approach the animal. I stand in front of the animal. I put my hands in a neutral position, and I say, I would like to massage you. May I touch you? And I watch the animal's response. I will sometimes stand back, put my hands behind my back, and let the animal relax and calm down, smell me, because I do scent myself. I use lavender when I'm working with animals. And so they can calm down my breathing. I make my breathing very normal and very deep, and so that they can sense the relaxation that I am feeling. And it builds a little bit of trust. Then I will put my hand down. I usually will squat slightly so that I'm not towering over them. I try to get more on their level. And I begin with all of my touch with animals is on the chest. That is the heart meridian, and it makes them relax. It helps them to trust me, and I just do slow stroking motions with that. calms them down.
It calms me down just listening to you talk about it. I'm just coming into a very relaxed place.
It's very rhythmic.
Since I've seen you work and I am really comfortable with how you work, I personally don't have any objections to the kind of work you do because I see how the animals respond. But I know that's not always the case. I know there are people who might even be tuning in today who maybe have heard, oh, Reiki, energy work, animal communication, all that fits in the category of woo, and it's not real. I can't see it, so therefore it's not real. So I wondered if you would talk a little bit about how do you answer those sorts of objections?
You know, there isn't really an answer for me other than for me to ask them to just observe the animal then, because it's not, if people have said things like, oh, I don't understand energy and I don't use energy, and I try to make the analogy of, well, what about today you were thinking about your husband and all of a sudden your husband calls you and says, I was just thinking about you. And I try to point out that we make these energy connections all the time without being aware of it. And that's just my opener for them. And then they just have to see and believe for themselves. I cannot make people believe that this is a possibility for them. So.
Right, and certainly you haven't had to do a lot of convincing to the animals, and
No.
I've seen that be the case at the shelter. True. When you walk through, the animals recognize you after experiencing you a time or two, and I can see a difference in them, in their attitudes towards you, and also in what you're able to affect. So if we have animals that are stressed, which often happens, or animals that have had surgery, animals that are fearful, you can come in and do some work with them, and there's an improvement. It's really exciting to watch. Do you want to tell a story about any animals that you've worked on at the shelter?
Well, it is very fulfilling, and one of our the biggest success stories for the Humane Society to date, because there have been so many. And Jax was a very fearful boy. He feared everything. Everything was a challenge to him. Even after having experienced it several times, every day was a new experience for him. And we started, Catherine let me start using my aromatherapy on me, and what I do is I usually spray a little bit on my hands, rub them together, and then when I start massaging the animal, then the scent also transfers to the animal. And so that becomes a pleasant experience for him. So every time I walked by and he smelled me, he was aware that something wonderful was going to happen for him. And he was able to relax and stretch out finally. It took us a few sessions. It did not happen immediately. This was not something that was an overnight thing. But the fact that we started using the scent, everybody started using the scent. We left it on his kennels so that everybody could spray their hands, and when they would walk him, then that became a more pleasant experience. Using it, trying to get him into cars, or using it to make him, help him to overcome, just walking by other animals. It really started to have a wonderful effect on him.
It sure did. And I, from a training standpoint, it was really fascinating to watch because I saw this lavender spray become create a conditioned emotional response in the dog. And so what would happen was, instead of him barking or growling as a stranger walked past his kennel, they would just pick up and spray. And as soon as you would pick up that little bottle, he would shake off and he would completely release. It was so exciting to see that then this spray became a marker that good things were going to happen. And it was a wonderful way to communicate to him, and I think really made the difference in how we were able to proceed moving forward with him and eventually get him adopted. And I was so excited because when he was adopted by a woman who said, well, I basically have lavender all over my house. And we said, oh, well, this is meant to be. Yeah, this was perfect. How about we get a dog out and you can show us some of the techniques that you use the most?
I would love to. Thank you.
So this is Joshie, and Joshie is an 8-year-old male pit bull who was surrendered to the shelter a few months ago. We've actually had him about 2 months. He was intact and he had entropion, so his eyelashes were in on the right side, which is why he looks a little rough around the edges, because he had some eye surgery and he was also neutered. He's been a great dog at the shelter and one of your #1 fans,
I
I
love this
think.
boy.
So show us how you get started on one of our shelter dogs.
Well, generally speaking, I walk into the kennel. I always do the same thing. I always ask permission because they can decline anytime they would prefer. Josh is getting into his usual position for me because his favorite position is his full chest. And he'll start snoring here in just a moment but generally speaking, I would start with an animal's frontal chest, and just stroking very slowly. This is again the heart meridian that I'm working with because it calms them down and it gives them courage. Then I will move to the pericardium area, which is behind the arm, the front arm, and stroking upward. The pericardium is where the trust lies, because if you think about a human pericardium or anybody's pericardium, the pericardium is the tissue that protects the heart. It's the sac that actually protects the heart. And when you can access the pericardium meridian on an animal, then you are getting them to trust you. You are allowing them to trust you. And it's just a slow stroking motion. Whatever you do on one side of an animal, or a person even, you should always do on the other side. We may not get that today because if he falls asleep and the table's a little small, but generally speaking, I would work both sides of the animal.
He's definitely relaxing into that. I love that he's opening his body up to you.
That's right, and he lets me hold his arm up. He's like, here, hold this for me. There he goes.
Yeah, big sigh there.
And so, just massaging all of this area. This is the conception vessel down here. And, a lot of acupressure points are on here, which help to ease discomfort in the animal. It helps to also release energy that's stored, or it can activate energy in parts of his makeup that aren't working so well. And I always let an animal dictate to me. My massages are never the same on any two animals because the animal gets to decide what they want to have done. They will tell me what area they want me to do. They will lean into me. They will turn around to me so that I can access their rear end, because this is another release point, the back of the legs. And you can see there goes his leg. He's just happy as a little clam. He's like, oh my God, just touch me everywhere. He's had a rough little life. And the more you touch an animal, the more they will tell you about their life, and the more they're able to release it so that they can move on as well and make just a lovely pet. And I know everybody pets their animals. It is the truth.
Yeah, that was the question I had for you. Is I rub my dog's belly.
Yes.
Is that the same?
It is. It actually is. I rub with intention, which means I'm getting maybe a slightly different result than you would get, but you're still comforting your animal and giving them a touch is always a sign of, reassurance to anybody. And so if you are massaging your animal, just petting your animal, but rubbing their belly, but they're asking you, no animal will present parts of their body, especially a stomach, which is very, they protect that. That's vulnerable. This is a very vulnerable position. So you can tell when your animal really trusts you by the amount of access you have to his body, the things that you can touch. A lot of people say, well, I can't touch their paws, or I can't touch their, and it's just getting them used to you touching a certain area. He's going, no. He's pushing me down to, he doesn't want his paws done. He is telling me absolutely, this is where I want to be. It's not that he's obviously not being aggressive when I touch his paws. He just has a preference right now. This is it.
Yeah. Why stop what feels good?
Exactly.
Yeah,
and and he's getting benefit out of this, and whatever benefit he needs, that's my purpose, is to let them choose what they need at the time.
So when you're working with, you work with both dogs and cats
Yes,
in the shelter.
I do.
And do you spend about the same number of time for each animal, or how does that vary?
Each animal will tell me when they're done. They all have their own little ways of saying, this, I've had enough, either by moving away from me, or, actually once they fall asleep, I can usually move on. But most animals just need to be touched, and it helps them to release anyway. And it prepares them for life on the floor, when they move from our intake areas, those kennels, which are away from public to out to the public, because they are going to experience things on the floor that it's even scarier on the floor for them. So
right, just because of the vast number of people
exactly
coming through
and
staring at them with those
staring and poking and all the things that people tend to do.
Little children putting their fingers in. Not a
we
good idea.
always forget that animals stare at each other for a totally different reason than we do, and they take it as a threat a lot of times. And so I spend time looking at them and touching them so that they then can associate, okay, well, maybe not always is somebody looking at me head on mean it's a threatening thing. So again, it is, so I spend about 10 minutes on most animals. If they have a need, if they've had surgery or they're really stressed. But again, they get to pick the amount of time, because if they're really stressed, sometimes they can't handle much touch, and so I will come back more often for them instead of having an elongated session with them.
Yeah, I think you're one of the few people in the entire shelter who has her hands on almost every animal in our care every day, just about, almost every day.
I touch and when I'm there, I do my best to touch or speak to or address every animal in the shelter, and I do my best to touch them all, because touch is very important, and they're just beginning to find out, even with cats, how important touch actually is.
Right.
People thought cats are aloof. Not so. They just have their own way of doing things.
And I think this old boy, he spent the little bit of history that we have on him is he spent quite a deal of time outside in the backyard on a chain, and he was not a house pet. And he was not, I don't think, touched much.
No.
And he is absolutely soaking this up.
So it was at first, touching him, my sessions were only 3 or 4 minutes at first, because his skin would tighten up, and it was, so I just had to give him a couple of days, and he'd shake off, and I'd wait for him to come back to me. On the days he didn't come back for more massage, then we'd call it good, and I'd move on. But every time I walked by, I would make sure that I would speak to him so that he would smell and, hear my voice and know that that's a comforting thing.
Well, clearly he's relaxed now. In fact, I hate to break it to him, but I was hoping that we could also work on another dog today.
Oh, that would be good. He's relaxed as he can be.
Even though Joshy's not quite done.
No,
maybe we can come back and finish up on you later, bud. And so we're going to take just a little bit of a break, and we'll bring out a second dog. So this is Penny, and she's my girl. She's a 9-year-old female spayed Vizsla. She doesn't have any particular health problems or any issues, although she is a little bit uncomfortable up on this platform right now.
Yes.
So I thought you would enjoy meeting her and working with her a little bit. And specifically, I wondered if you could show us some things to do sort of maintenance at home. How do we, if we're petting our dogs anyway, how do we interact with our pets in a way that is beneficial to them?
Well, as you can see, this is always just a really good place to go. It just gives them comfort, it makes them relax. Also, when you take an animal to a vet or any stressful situation, this is always just the perfect thing to work on them. It helps them to focus on, being courageous and being okay. So
your hands are
my hand is right in the
between her legs,
right
there,
where you feel. Now, all of the points for acupressure are in soft tissue. So you're never actually putting any pressure on any bony surface.
Okay.
So the bony structure that you feel in her chest, you go on either side of it and just up and around it. So it's like your hand is in this kind of motion. Yes, there's a little pocket, and you go from between the legs up past the little bony protrusion and up like that. And it's always a slow motion. The slower the motion,
slow enough?
That's good.
Okay.
You could go, you will be able to dictate, she will dictate what works the best for her, but she seems to like the slow motion there. And it's just wonderful for people to be able to relax their animals, but it also is a great connection point because, again, the heart meridian. The heart meridian is the most important meridian that, for relationships.
So is there No, I want to know how many times to do this.
You can do it as many times as
need
the
a
dog will
number.
stand there. You don't have to count. You don't. This is not.
Okay.
This is just until the animal seems relaxed and would like you to move on. Sometimes
Okay.
they won't want you to, so you
What do you
just
think,
find their new
Penny?
areas.
What do you think, Penny? So she says, I'm going to stand here. She's been trained,
Yes.
sort of to be up on a platform and to wait
Yes.
till she's told to do something.
Right.
So she's. I also have put little sticky notes all over her to show anatomy. So
Very
she's
good.
She's not really sure what
Perfect.
she's in for today.
So today, the other thing that I would like to show then is when I was telling you with Joshy that I would do both sides. Then I would go and do the pericardium. So again, it's just this slow stroking from the armpit up. And then I will move and do the other side. And like I said, it's just a rhythmic thing for me. And so as the animal is, relaxing, if they're not moving away from me, then I know that it is working for them. It's making them feel comfortable.
What do you think, Miss? She says, I don't know. Where's the chicken?
Yeah.
What do you think, girly? So are there,
Yes.
she's a really active dog.
Yes.
So she ends up leaping and running after things. and
Exactly.
I'm always, she's in good health. She doesn't have any arthritis at her age, but I know that as we age, our muscles
Right.
change, our bones change. And so
Right.
are there some maintenance things I can do
Yes,
for her?
absolutely.
Show us some things.
So once you get them into the relaxed state, then it's always the easiest to work on the rest of them. As far as jumpy dogs go, there are 2 points about an inch or 2 off of the top line, which are relaxation points as well. And you just, when your dog is jumping, you can just put a little pressure on that and do the stroke on the chest as well. But as far as massage for them,
I'm going to go back because this touch you
Yes.
showed me working with some of the dogs at the shelter.
Right.
And I was fascinated at how it really did settle them down. And I've since showed it to a couple of clients
Yes.
with just almost magical results. Really fun. Yes, okay, I think I'm just going to drop my
That's
head
right.
here.
And so that's always excellent. Another, before we move away from the head area then, is, the third eye on a dog is right, in between their eyes as well. And I use my whole hand because then I go behind their ears as well, which is also a nice relaxation point. So when we go to massage a dog with joint issues, then I usually come off the top line, and again, soft tissue. So you're staying away from the bony structures, but that also helps to, if you can relax the tendons and muscles, then it releases the pressure on the joints. And so that's what I do with some of our shelter dogs. And, I if they're sensitive with their feet, then I just, and your dogs, the same thing, to get them used to your touch is, just go, there we go, what a good girl, is to do, and I usually, most dogs you can do both sides at the same time. So you just circular motions, but always in the soft tissue. When you move down their back then, again, 2 inches, 1 to 2 inches off the spine, still soft tissue, touching all of those points. And if they have hip problems, then you start up at the hip. Again, circular in clockwise motion, just very tender, gently, because that can be very tender for them. And as they allow you to, she likes the chest, saying, please do my chest. But just little circular motions. The stifle here on the dog is where a lot of dogs have problems when they get older. A lot of dogs tear that particular joint out as they get older.
For sure, especially the really active ones.
Right, and so just to keep them, before they even get to that point, if you massage those tendons and keep them soft and supple, then you will help them to keep their joints in place. It's when the tendons get too tight from too much exercise and not enough relaxation that the little joint underneath tends to slip out of its spot. And then, of course, we know the surgeries are very expensive. So, but always your pressure should only be what your animal can tolerate. And you know your animal certainly well enough to know what she tolerates the best. And so I'd like you to kind of massage her rear end so that she can, because it'll help release her little tension right now. And so into this large muscle here, exactly, and you take from the inside out, you kind of do a rolling motion from the inside out.
Like
yes.
this.
Rolling motion, exactly. And that helps to relieve that tension back there. And then, and they will stretch. Eventually, they'll stretch into that to help you relax. You know, it helps.
She's completely leaned into me.
Yeah,
Here.
she is happy as a little clam. And so then, when you're doing the front side, the same thing from the inside of the leg, but just gently because that's a very sensitive area for them. And this motion right in through here to help relax the tendons that control the back part of the leg to keep them comfortable. Again, here's your hip bone up in here. So small circular motions, and then work your way down into all of these. And that usually will relieve a lot of the...
She's about falling into my arms here. I can hardly hold her up.
Success. That's all I can say. It's
She's gonna fall asleep right in my arms. Now she's starting to relax a little bit.
Yes.
She just needed to know that it was okay to lay down.
Yes, like I said, having strange, this isn't her normal situation, and so it doesn't surprise me. So now you can see also why, when we're in the shelter, how getting them to relax can be a challenge, because everything is different for them there. There's barking dogs, there's people in motion, there's clanging, there's, so when they can get to this point, or even close to this point in the shelter, I still consider it a success story. But when it's your own dog, being able to do this at home, and then the bond that you've created. First of all, animals, and dogs especially, will do anything for you. They will love you no matter how you treat them, as we all know. But this is like the icing on that cake. It also shows them that you would do anything for them as well. And so it's a heart connection. That is what my whole thing is, whether I'm touching people or animals. It's trying to make the heart connection so that we can make a world a little better place. Everybody's a lot happier when they feel loved. And
well, this particular dog, you see she's starting to fall asleep. My son started rubbing her feet when they would go to sleep together. And so now she doesn't feel like the evening's complete unless she's had her
foot rub. That's excellent.
Her nightly foot
because,
rub.
In acupressure, Chinese medicine, they're called ting points. So every meridian in the body ends up in our hands and feet, or in the dog's paws, or the horse's hooves. It doesn't matter. That is where all of the energy begins or ends. And so to be able to massage their feet and their toes gives them that total relaxation and well-being. And so it is imperative, in a way, to me, that you get to be able to touch your animal's feet. A lot of people say that they cannot touch their cat's feet, or they can't touch they can't trim nails on their animals. And it just takes being gentle with them without, just going and cutting their nails right away. It's a permission thing, but to let them know that it's not necessarily unpleasant to have these things done. And and it also, because of the health benefits of being able to do it in the first place, it's a worthwhile step to take to make sure that we can touch our animals.
Absolutely. I am so grateful for you coming onto the show today, Jackie, and showing us these things. And thank you for all your work at Willamette Humane. I hope you'll join us at Willamette Humane Society. Come down and see us on Turner Road in Salem, Oregon. And who knows, maybe you'll find your next #1 fan.
Ready? Go. Yeah, sounds like that. Great. As soon as she goes there, and then she has to see her so biting too.
Hi, buddy. Hi, honey.